All right, at this time, I'll call this workshop to order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Commissioner Penny?
Here.
Commissioner Curry?
Here.
Commissioner Danio?
Here.
Commissioner Johnson?
Here.
Mayor Villa?
Here. All right. So, Joe, I know we have, I don't have the agenda right in front of me, but I know we have several goal items that we need to discuss, and looks like we have about 2 hours before the commission meeting, so we should be able to get through a lot of them. We also have in front of us the goals from last year, which it's nice to look at a goals list with a lot of strike-throughs on them. It means that staff did a great job implementing these goals that we outlined for 2019. I know many of us helped put together these goals, and we'll go through it. We can have it kind of open here today and be able to throw out ideas here and there. But before we begin, Joe, would you like to go over anything before we dive in?
Well, I thought it would probably be best in order to go over the last year's list and just kind of review and refresh what's on there and either confirm some of these goals were they're done, they're completed, they're closed out. Others are ongoing and will be left open in perpetuity because that's just the type of goal that it is. Right. And others still have time to be completed. So we can run down these goals and just take a few minutes and see if we're going to keep anything on the old list of goals. And then once we're done with that, we'll open up the other item, the other list of discussion goal items, and see where we want to add or not. And again, this is just a list. It's not the list. Add to it, take away from it, whatever we want to do at the end of the day.
Okay. And as we go through, if anyone has questions, you can just blurt them out. And if you need clarification from any staff members, feel free to call them up as well. So if you want to kick this thing off, Mr. Forte.
Sure. Val, I emailed you the old goals if you want to bring them up. This way they're at least visible for anybody else that wants to see it. But sometime in probably early 2019, so this list is probably well over a year and a half old. We're actually starting this year's goals earlier, and we really never did. We're actually working on 2021 goals rather than 2020 goals, which we never did, which we would have done back at the beginning of COVID, which never happened. So in going down the old list, we had beautification projects and parks, prepare and plan a budget to provide for park improvements. And in Sunrise Park, we had the fitness court, the pier replacement, and I shot everyone an email as late as today with an update on what's happening with the pier and the seawall. And you can see the frustration that 3 years after the storm, we're still going through. Steve's been doing a great job on that, but it's very frustrating, and I'm glad he responds in emails rather than me, because mine would be less than acceptable, I think.
Mr. Forte, do you want to take that moment now to discuss with the commission what we had talked about yesterday?
Sure. Yeah, you can take that.
So you all were copied on all of the emails, and obviously you know the struggle that the city has gone through to be able to receive the money back from FEMA to be able to rebuild the pier and to rebuild the seawall, the damaged seawall. These are projects that are extremely expensive, and I know that I field a lot of questions from citizens, and a lot of people think that they're not getting anything done because they don't see anything done for the past several years. You know, I don't blame them for thinking that, but the fact is, as you all know, we're all CC'd on all of the emails that every single week Steve Younks is working really hard with them to try to get some traction. So about a year ago, maybe, Mr. Forte and I met with Congressman Michael Waltz to tell him of the plight of what we're going through. And Mr. Forte can elaborate on it more, but basically they just keep moving the goalpost. Every time we come close to being able to maybe get something signed off and to receive this money, the goal then moves and they switch a new director and everything has to start again from the beginning. Just government bureaucracy at its finest. So Michael Waltz had turned some gears, and at that time it seemed like maybe there was a little bit of traction, and that all went away very quickly. So back to square one, and now it was the worst news I think that we've received through this process just lately that you can touch on in a moment, Joe. But to this point, it's absolutely fundamentally wrong, I think, what the federal government is doing with the money. It's almost as if they just do not want us to get this money. So they just keep saying jump higher, jump higher, jump higher, and at some point we're not going to be able to jump higher. So Mr. Forte and I talked about that maybe we need to call Congressman Waltz again and also get Senator Scott involved after Congressman Waltz. Wow. To
You on duty, Roy, or you?
I think you set another poll too close to the primary over this.
yeah. For people listening at home, the lights just went off here at City Hall and they came back on. So I wanted to bring it up to the commission because although we can have these discussions, it is a political matter, and sometimes when a congressman or especially a senator could make some calls and say what's going on and push some buttons, it may unlock something. It may not. But we thought that it might be worth a shot. And so we just kind of wanted to see if you guys were okay with that and kind of the autonomy of us being able to go to Congressman Waltz and Senator Scott and maybe even our, Tom Leek and Elizabeth Fetterhoff to discuss this and to ask them on behalf of the city to please try to help us here, move this forward. I think it's literally our last-ditch effort, and we'll find out pretty quickly how far we're going to get with it. So, Joe, I don't know if you want to elaborate more on any of the problems specifically.
There's really not much more to elaborate on. We go through this process. We're probably on our 5th contact point for the FEMA reimbursement, and this last guy we've been dealing with, Ron Hulvel, I thought we were making some pretty good strides. And, here we are anticipating we're going to get some response on the seawall, and then we're told, well, it was approved, but now it's not approved, and they're arguing that they don't think it's the result of Hurricane Irma, even though when they had the inspectors come out, the light rusting indicated that it was a new damage rather than if it was compounded rusting that had really been oxidizing over a longer period of time. So, as time goes on, these things deteriorate and get worse and look worse. So we went from being, there's a phrase that they use, and I asked Steve to kind of narrow it down. I forgot what they said. Either the project is proceeding or the project is moving. Well, that doesn't mean approved. And, when we get a response that says, well, it's moving forward or it's proceeding, we assume that that's in the right direction. Well, apparently it's not. So I talked to Steve and I said, when you get these kind of vague positions, we need to narrow down what exactly that means so that we know a little bit better. And that's not the term. I forgot what the term is that they used. So that's kind of frustrating. And then that's at the federal level. So these guys are going to point fingers at each other. The state's going to point fingers at the feds. The feds are going to point fingers at the state. So we're at a standstill on the pier and the seawall. And we're also at a standstill on the state level from our debris monitoring and hauling reimbursements. And that's at the quality control level through KPMG, who's the audit firm that's been overseeing all this. Well, we should have been done by this a long time ago. And I don't know if other cities are in the same position that we are or not, but the longer we delay, the worse it is, because that just means they're finding problems or whatever the case may be. So at this point, I'd like to find out what the number is. How much are we asking for reimbursement that we haven't gotten yet, and use that to contact the congressman or the senator and say, Holly Hill, this small, lower middle class community is out $2 million because your people are taking too long to help us get reimbursed, and we've got these dilapidated structures. What are we going to do? So once we get that number, I think we'll have a little bit more to argue rather than just, I don't want to make it seem like we're arguing over $20,000. We're not.
Right.
So I want to get you a solid number and then try to make those contacts.
It's well over 1 million, and it's more like 2 million, right?
I
Roughly.
don't know specifically what the numbers are. You got the pier is one project, you've got the south seawall, which is another project. And then the third item that I crossed off on this list was the removal of the pier at the South Park. Well, that South Pier was a project, and it was a reimbursable project by FEMA. And when we decided not to repair it, to remove it, they said, well, you can take that money that you were going to use for that repair and you could allocate it to an alternative project. So the alternative project we selected was the north side of Sunrise Park at that seawall. Well, this week they came back and they said, oh, by the way, show us your permits for the demolition. We didn't get permits for the demolition. We demolished the pier. We took it out. So I went on to the DEP website, and there's all kinds of permits for constructing, building a single-family pier, building a commercial pier, doing it in a canal, doing it in the intercoastal, doing it in protected waters. There's no permit specifically for removal of a pier. So I called them, I left a message, I sent an email, and they're supposed to get back to me to let me know if there is even a permit to be issued, even though we didn't get one. Are they going to require something of us, maybe some affidavit from the contractor who removed it, or a letter that says you didn't need a permit to remove the pier. You only need a permit to install the pier. So we're waiting on that, but that just came up this week too. So there's always something coming out of FEMA in the state, and I try not to be too critical, but I don't like FEMA.
Does anybody have any comments on that?
Yeah, Joe, where do we stand if our pier was owned by a resident? Weren't we issuing code violations? Or are we still issuing code violations?
We haven't
derelict
issued,
docks?
I don't believe we've issued code violations specifically. We've sent letters to the property owners of the people who had piers along Riverside Drive to have them either repair, remove, or do something with these demolished structures that they had, and they've been working on it. Now, when they come in to do a repair, they get a permit, and certain aspects of that permit you don't have to do anything with because it's been pre-existing, and I think as long as the pilings are there, you can go in and you can redo your stringers and your deck boards. So we haven't cited anybody specifically for it. Some people are starting to get it done. Some people can't afford to get it done. You know,
Right.
repairing those things are expensive.
No, I just think, it's fish or cut bait. It's been 3 years. I know we've been waiting on FEMA, waiting on FEMA, waiting on FEMA. People ask me, what are you going to do with those docks? We're waiting on FEMA. Well, the last email says FEMA's telling you no. So
Well, we got to go through now another appeal process.
no, I understand, and I agree with the mayor that if we can use any political influence, that's to our best interest. But at some point, we just got to either
Well,
take
you-
it down or bite the bullet and pay for it somehow, because we've got it there, it's unsightly.
Well, just think of it this way, the seawall is a requirement. That's got to get fixed. The pier is a luxury. You don't have to have a pier.
Right.
But you've got a seawall holding this park up, and if that continues to fail, that will become catastrophic.
So
So,
I understand, it's just, we just at some point need to give ourselves a deadline and go, okay, if we don't have this done by
remember,
the
you don't
end
have
of
money.
2021, we're going to just tear that pier down and put all their money into fixing the seawall somehow.
Right.
You may
We
end
just
up
need
having
a-
to get a loan.
We need a solidified answer because the latest news, I didn't see it as a hard no. It was more like just more hoops to jump through. It was more like this isn't looking good.
Remember, if you go back several years ago, FEMA has told us, go ahead and fix it.
Right.
And submit for reimbursement. Well, we're concerned that we lay out these hundreds of thousands of dollars and then we get told, well, we're not going to reimburse you.
You have it in writing. Does it matter if it's in writing from FEMA?
No,
Doesn't
all
matter.
they're saying is you can put in to be reimbursed, doesn't mean you will. So our concern is we lay out hundreds of thousands of dollars, and here we are in the same boat going, they won't reimburse us. So
It's
rather than
millions.
do the work and not have the money, we're not doing the work, we're holding on to the money that we don't really have, and they're saying, well, don't treat us like an insurance company. Don't put in a claim before you pay for it. you should, and that's what some cities did. Some cities have the money to go out and fix things and then put in for reimbursement from FEMA, and that might have expedited it. So they sure don't make it easier for smaller cities that have limited budgets.
Right. Well, and I think if we do decide possibly, if, you know, in the next budget season, if we talk about, if we have a no at that point that they're not going to give it to us before we start the project, then if we do decide to build it back, we do not anticipate that we get that money back, because just judging on how this process has gone, it could take 5 years even after that to get it, or we could never get it. So, Mr. Penny,
That's it. No.
any other comments about this before we move on? Is everyone okay with us talking?
One thing you gotta
Yep.
remember is that when you deal with the federal government, I have dealt with, they deal with the whole country. They deal with the states and then down to the counties and the cities and everything, is such big cities, and they'll put you on a list of priorities. And the only way, if they turn it down and they have lots of resources to find reasons to turn it down and all that, the only way that you're gonna get them to come around with anything is to put political pressure on them like we're trying to do. That's the only way you're gonna, otherwise they're gonna find this, they're gonna find that.
Right.
And that's just the way they work.
All right, so we'll keep you up to date with any talks that we have moving forward. Mr. Forte?
Okay, under item 2 of number 1, you have Hollyland Park, the pickleball, and that has been completed and is open. The community gardens is underway. Those gardens have been set, they've been filled with dirt. Now we're working on getting the volunteers and the garden clubs to start participating. The clubhouse is done, the restaurant is done, the pavilion is done. We had a meeting today, and we're working on closing out those permits, finalizing the site plan, and getting the project done. The recreation courts are still, they're just about done. I'd probably say about another week or two. By the end of the month, certainly, everything should be done over at Hollyland Park.
They figure out the turf issue over there, what they're gonna use?
Yeah, we're putting rock in that inside area. And they, while we were over there, we identified that those recreation courts were not ADA compliant, so we had them put in some ADA sidewalks as well. Ross Point restroom facility, that is also done. The Riviera Dog Park, the general maintenance has been taken care of. The pavilion has been repaired. Under item B, code enforcement efforts, ensure compliance with outside display. We've been doing that. As you know, we lost one code officer during the COVID activities. We held that open for a couple of months, and we've rehired back Mark Ballard. So now I've got 2 folks in code enforcement that are doing a good job. The number of violations that they're identifying are increasing. The number of properties coming into compliance are increasing. I still say if you drive down from 95 and US 1 into Port Orange and US 1 on a Sunday and you see what's out there, our city looks pretty darn good compared to these other cities. So it's tough to turn the ship of the stigma that we've gotten in this city, but our US 1 looks much better than coming down US 1 in Ormond Beach, coming down in Daytona Beach, parts of South Daytona and Port Orange. So it is getting better, but there's always, in this community, code enforcement is an issue and will continue and always have an issue. But we are working on it, and we're slowly changing that direction. As far as business development,
Mr. Mayor, can I comment on
Yeah.
code enforcement real
Go
quick?
ahead.
Sorry, Joe. I know recently we've told our chief of police to focus on speeding. And, I think as far as changing the image and the perception of our city would be much better off if we were known to have the code enforcement of Palm Coast than the speeding tolerance of Ponce Inlet. When you drive, it's no secret, when you drive down A1A through the shores to Ponce Inlet, if you're 1 mile an hour over, you're gonna get pulled
Not
over.
true, 6.
But I think we strongly need to enforce code enforcement, and US 1 is looking much better. If you go on Google Earth and flip back over the years, you can see the changes. But it needs to go further out. It needs to go into our entire city. And I know we only have a team of 2, and they are busting their butts. We get the reports every week. Joe sends them to us of what's going on, the cases and the follow-up. But I think to change the image, code enforcement is the way to change the image, rather than, if you had to pick 2, reducing speeding or increasing code enforcement, what are people going to see? I think they're going to see the code enforcement. So I think we need to keep that as a high priority on our goals for this year.
Yes.
I agree with Commissioner Penny. The only difference I see is the police department can handle all those speeders and our code enforcement, because you guys don't handle code at all anymore, do you? Okay, I didn't think so. But I am adamant about code as well. I think that's the huge thing that has slowly been increasing our image, and we just need to really, really continue that, especially since we have so many positive economic development activities going on. We need to just continue to harp upon the code. I agree.
Okay, Commissioner?
Is it?
Yep.
Business development, recruit new business to fill vacant properties and develop a plan to address underserved properties. We've, as I alluded to at the last meeting, we've made an offer, and the candidate has accepted the position for the Economic Development CRA Manager position, and his name is Kevin Fall, and he's actually currently working as a budget analyst for the city of Port Orange. Kevin Fall used to work in Seminole County prior to my going to Seminole County. He left in late 2007, where he was the economic development manager for the county. He left Seminole County, went to New Smyrna Beach as the economic development coordinator there. He worked on expanding their CRA and their time frame, annexations, all the things that we need him to do. He had some personal things go on in his life. He ended up going into the private sector for a short period of time, and now he's back working for Port Orange as a budget analyst. So with his experience in economic development and CRA and his experience in finance, I think he's a great candidate. It'll be a very low learning curve for him in the position, so we'll be able to kind of pick up right where we left off and even advance a little bit quicker than we had been, I believe. Community events, we continue with the events that we had. The Arts Festival was canceled this year. That we only did one of those events. I don't know what's going to happen in these coming months. The managers, I'm not even sure what's happening with Biketoberfest as of this moment. I don't know if it's on, if it's off, if the city of Daytona Beach is issuing permits, if these people are just going to show up whether they get permits or not. So we're up against that time frame where we need to start to solicit participants in the parade. The parade is the last week of November, first week of December, and we need to kind of make the decision if we're going to allow those crowds, that crowd, to come onto US 1 in close proximity, wear a mask, mandatory mask, non-mandatory mask. So we got to figure out what we're going to do with that. The same thing with Halloween in the park. Last year we did it. We didn't have the park, and now we've got pickleball over there. So we've got to determine where are we going to do Halloween in the park, if we're even going to do it. Again, this COVID virus is kind of putting a glitch in all of that. So,
Great question. I would be in favor, especially at this point, to move forward with our Christmas parade and to put measures in place and to encourage viewers to be 6 feet apart unless they're with their family. If this is still as strong as the virus is now, hopefully, obviously, we all want it to be down, but let's assume that it doesn't go down. I would still be in favor of it. It's something that spreads so much cheer and joy and the celebration of Christmas that's coming, and we have one of the longest running parades in Volusia County, Christmas parades. And furthermore, I would also like to continue still moving forward with the Christmas tree lighting. But maybe when we get near, if the numbers haven't dropped and COVID is still an issue, maybe we make it an online event with just, the commission there. We're separated 6 feet apart, and we do a Facebook Live event that we promote, and we flip the switch, and digitally it's out there. It's different, but it doesn't break with the tradition of us bringing in the Christmas season. We're very proud of it. So I don't know if anyone else has anything to add on that, and I'm not sure what to do about
I'll tell you one thing that I believe.
Halloween.
That we're gonna learn a lot from is what happens in Sturgis.
Yeah.
If Sturgis is a low key, everything goes smooth, there's no increase in cases or anything because of it, I think it's going to determine a lot about what will happen with Oktoberfest and the other events from there to the end of the year.
Sturgis is this week.
Goes off without it.
Sturgis is right now.
It's right now.
Sturgis is right now is gonna, they don't see the consequences that are gonna happen. In a month from now, it's gonna be, this thing ain't going anywhere, guys.
You got Sturgis, you also have the schools opening up. I don't
And
know
you're
what's
not gonna
happen.
keep people 6 feet apart on Ridgewood Avenue or get them to wear face masks. I'm not trying to be the Grinch, I'm just trying to be a realist there.
I think the Sturgis
Well-
is gonna set the level of how it's gonna go. I really do. If Sturgis goes off without any problems there, I think it's gonna change the way people think about it.
Sturgis is having an event with no masks and no social distancing. 250,000 bikers.
I don't see any way to socially distance people on US 1. I'm not saying it's time to pull the plug on it now, but when you have college football, major conferences canceling their
Yeah.
seasons and trying to postpone them to the spring of 2021, I don't know how that, I don't want to be the Grinch like Commissioner Danio said, but to be responsible, I don't know how we can encourage people to gather that closely, and we don't have enough cops to make sure they're 6 feet apart. We could put a tape every 10 feet down US 1. People aren't going to comply with it. And then to say your family can stay here, well, what's your family? Well, that's Uncle Joe. Well, he's not really your uncle, but you call him Uncle Joe. And how do we do that safely? It's going to be here in a blink of an eye. I say we continue to plan for it, but with the realistic expectation that it may not happen.
Well, and Vice Mayor too, I don't want any enforcement of it. We would encourage people to stay 6 feet apart, just like you go to a grocery store, you're encouraged here in the city of Holly Hill to stay 6 feet apart. If you go to a park, you're encouraged. And thankfully, we're not a city like some of the others in Volusia County that are sending out our police department to go and write tickets to people that aren't wearing masks for one reason or another, and they're not socially distancing. I believe in a lot of personal responsibility. I believe that there is a small role for government to look after the health and obviously public safety is first and foremost, but the individual health of someone, how close does it get from us being able to tell them where they can and cannot go? I know that we are sponsoring an event that is a parade, but I know that if people did not want to be out there, they wouldn't be out there. And so I'm just more of the thought of personal responsibility and encouraging them to be safe and keep that in mind.
Right. My concern is as the risk manager, we are sponsoring an event and encouraging people to come and be responsible or not be responsible. And if the Boy Scout troop gets it or the Little Baton Twirlers get it from the Mainland High School band and Morgan & Morgan sues us, that's the bigger picture. If I want to go to Publix, that's my personal choice. And if I get sick of Publix, John Morgan will probably sue them. But for us to sponsor an event and encourage people to come, I just worry about the liability side of things. Is it
I
the
hear you.
right thing to do? Is it the right thing to have a party at your house, a graduation party with 200 of your family members this weekend because your child graduates from high school? I don't know that that's responsible. It's a personal choice, but you see the inferences on television now. Do you have business interruption? Even though COVID is not a covered loss on an insurance policy, there are lawsuits being filed against it. And we're just a very litigious society. That's what concerns me.
Mayor, I don't want to either pull the plug right now. I think it might be a little premature, because the Christmas parade is, I'm all about traditions and family and holidays, and, but I can't either, I mean, people have their personal choice. I don't want to get in the weeds about whether we send our police out to measure the distance or mask. I don't want to get in the weeds about all that either. So I think the more responsible route to take, gosh, I'm agreeing with you an awful lot tonight, is to wait, because I wouldn't want to pull the plug right now until we're given the word, hey, you guys got to make a decision now or else we can't do either way. And if it comes down to it that we're not improving, we're in that place that we are right now,
Look at it this way.
it's not responsible.
We've had Christmas parades where the morning of the parade, we've had a tremendous downpour of rain and it was canceled. We can plan this parade up until the day of.
Right, that's what I was
Nothing
going to say.
says you can't cancel this
Right.
parade
Yeah.
the night before.
So I
I'd hate
think,
to have to do it that way, but
and I think
But
that-
also along with your line of Facebook Live for the tree lighting, I would support that 100%.
okay, good.
Because I think we'd at least be doing something.
Right.
several years ago, Ricky Glass used to sit in a bucket truck in the center of US 1 and videotape the entire parade. We could always run reruns.
Yeah, yeah. We could do a live event for that as well. Yeah. Oh, reruns.
Yeah,
Of
yeah.
last
We'll just
ones.
just show an old parade.
We'll do the Christmas lighting virtual, and we'll do the parade virtual.
That's right.
Yeah, so I think in the spirit of time, I think unless you have something
No, I
more
was
to
just
add.
gonna say, above and beyond the liability, I just look, the image that, we're trying to build an image, we don't want to be the center of, an outbreak or something, I don't know.
So I think it's most prudent, let's move forward with having our clerk move forward with putting that together. Maybe there can be a disclaimer that, hey, we're going to watch how this COVID happens, and the commission is going to discuss whether or not it's going to happen in the future. So we can just.
Well, you're
monitor.
still having your mayor's teleconferences, right?
Yeah, every week.
This issue's gonna come up
Yeah.
to other cities too.
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, yeah. All right, Joe?
Okay, number 4 was maintain a presence at the 2 schools, and we continue with the 5-0 Club, or.
Oh, wait 1 second, Joe. Halloween, we didn't talk about Halloween, and that's coming up faster, so let's just talk about it next commission meeting and just kind of play it by
Isn't
ear?
that really a chamber event?
Oh, good point.
It is a chamber event, but you've got a venue issue now.
Yeah.
We've
It's
got,
easier to back out then, in case.
could be. Did we actually do it here at City Hall?
We did it here,
Yeah,
Did it here.
last year.
and we did it a different day, remember?
Oh, that's right. it's
Yeah,
on
we're doing it the
Friday.
Friday before.
That's
Halloween
right.
now.
Yeah.
Some
When is
commissioner
Halloween?
suggestion. I don't know
On
if
the
it's good or bad.
31st.
Yeah, so we have to determine if we're gonna do it here, if we're gonna do it across the street, how it's,
Where would we do it across the street?
well, that's the question, parking is gonna be an issue, location is gonna be an issue, there's a lot of questions yet to happen.
31st is a Saturday,
So the day
Most-
before.
so
The
I
Friday
think the
before.
chamber had requested to do it the Friday before and the 30th.
I think the commission made the decision that it's always gonna be on a Friday.
Exactly.
Yep.
And it was the Friday before, correct? Yeah.
Because we were talking about new venue, new schedule.
So I've got a chamber meeting tomorrow, so I'll bring it up at the meeting.
Great.
All right, customer service mindset. I didn't cross through those because they're really an ongoing process. I did speak with Diane, and she's going to continue to send training recommendations to our customer service frontline people and allow them to, allow the supervisor to determine which customer service training modules they should work with for their employees. The Economic Development Riverside South, develop an entertainment zone, amend the comp plan and zoning regulations. This was an idea that Brian, Nick, and I talked about, that area right by Mason and Riverside and Beach Street, going into a rezoning of making that an entertainment district. Well, a lot of things have changed in the last year, and it really has not been a priority. But we're kind of heading that way when even on tonight's agenda, you've got the rezoning of the property the city owns at 224 Riverside. So I also had talked with Dino, who owns the property along the retention pond on First Street, and he's still actively trying to sell it. I tried to get him to release the city from the portion that we have, and he doesn't want to do that. So, and I don't know what's going to happen with that property either. So I'll tell you this, and if whether I'm here or somebody else is here, the next time we enter into a development agreement with somebody on a partnership that the city owns, there should be time frames, milestones to accomplish it. That deal was put together 12 years ago or more, and it was done with the intention that it would be developed within a year or two, but it was not contractually written that way. And here we are 12 more years later, and there's nothing happening. So we either need to put reverter clauses in these agreements that say, we'll be your partner if you do this by this time, otherwise we back out. And the same thing on the deal that I made with Fountainhead. You know, we're over 5 years into this process, and I think time limits should be part of the criteria on anything that we do. Let's see, the CRA boundary. Again, when we hired the new economic development manager, this will become a priority for Kevin to start to communicate with the county on expanding the boundaries, or I should say modifying the boundaries and expanding the time frame. If
You should
if
probably
that is in
strike
fact-
Blue Tide from that, Joe,
Why?
because the new owner
Yeah.
is sinking in hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars, remodeling all those apartments.
Yeah, we should have done it already, then
Yeah.
we would have been getting that money into the CRA.
Right, right.
So we'll just see what the future on that has.
Speaking of our new economic development coordinator, with the Dino property, I know that that's in an opportunity zone that everybody keeps throwing around, and it's very convoluted on what exactly that means, but I hope that he's familiar with some of those opportunity zones, maybe, and if not, then maybe we could have him attend a conference on it. They
I don't
do
think
several
anybody knows
things.
what opportunity zones are in this county.
What's that?
I don't think anybody knows what opportunity zones are in this county.
I vaguely know because the Florida League of Cities sat through a whole long presentation of
Except
it.
nobody's got one. Everybody's got one, nobody's got one implemented.
Right.
The only one that I could tell you I think knows more about opportunity zones is the attorney for Cobb and Cole,
Schnapsdollar.
Schnapsdollar.
You
He's
know,
probably the only person I know
But
that
actually, in
knows
East
about it.
Volusia, there's only a few opportunity zones. There's a couple in Daytona. There's one in Holly Hill, and not very many more. So it's interesting. So I don't know.
No.
Just food for thought.
Okay. Infrastructure projects, evaluate the water and wastewater infrastructure. That's an ongoing project. Evaluate and update the stormwater plan. That's been done. We've got the plan that was done probably 2014 or so. And we put in the budget this year to try to expand upon the Mirage Pond, which is in that plan. Evaluate road conditions. Antoine's got a road paving schedule, multi-year road paving schedule. Same thing with sidewalks, but again, these are budget constrained capital projects. Landscaping at Mason and Riverside, that's been done. Antoine was able to get the landscaping along Riverside and around the retention pond done. It looks very nice. So far, it's been holding up pretty well. That's maintained by a contractor. LPJ and Riverside Drive, have come up with a plan for approving the shops down there. Every several months or so, the owner of the shops gives us a call with a brainiac idea of how he wants to rezone everything down there, and some of it's really not reasonable because it all cuts through residential properties. So, we kind of keep an eye on that, and that is an area that I would like to add to the expansion of the CRA zone so that we could pump money into that as an old downtown redevelopment area. The widening of LPGA continues to stay on the list, as you have requested. Bridge over water, I'm not sure what that is. That might be the intercoastal. Kind of left that somewhat vague. So we're still just monitoring what's happening with LPGA. We met with folks, the engineers, and right now the 3-laning is still on the long-range plan for right now until such time as any type of funding comes up to do anything more. Roy, do you have anything that you've heard recently at the TPO?
Not very much because we have.
Hey, Roy, could you sit up into the microphone?
Not very much because all the meetings have been virtual lately. And nobody brings many things up until we gather back at a meeting again. Believe me, when we do, it's gonna be on the agenda a lot. That and also, Williamson Boulevard from LPGA to the hospital, that Hammond Avenue, that really should be widened, but that's not our deal, but
Well-
it should be on the agenda.
Well, recently, actually, in a debate on Mark Bernier, the county chair candidates were all asked about LPGA and a bridge, and the way that they talked about it sounded more like a bridge over the intercoastal, as opposed to possibly the small bridge out on LPGA past the interstate. And I know that they can't fund that as well. So I don't know if they are mixing up the issues, but all the candidates said, yeah, I've talked a lot about this. This is an issue, and people are talking about it. And, there's talks being had about this bridge right now, and this needs to be done for the future of all of us. So they weren't very clear on it. I'm going to have to call a couple of them because they all said that. And they said that there's talks being had, and I know that I haven't been involved in any bridge talk. So hopefully they're talking about the bridge out there.
An exit off of the interstate.
Okay.
Granada is, and if it did go, it would be another, taking a lot of traffic away from Granada. And
Right.
That's why I'm talking about it, I think.
Right.
Because one thing about it, Ormond, I think, wants it pretty bad.
Oh yeah. Dwight Selby, one of their commissioners, wants us to build a bridge over the river here, and
Really, realistically, it makes sense.
it
Simply because it's an exit off the interstate and coming straight through.
it does. But
Missed our chance.
looking at the boondoggle of what they just did in Daytona,
Probably
with
only
Veterans
10
Memorial
years.
Bridge, yeah, and the funding definitely would have to come from everybody else.
That was a
Yeah.
lot of extra funding on that
Yeah.
bridge they
Well,
didn't expect.
And that was an existing bridge that they could build. We don't have really a place for it to come over here in our city.
And it's not
and
going
then
to
over
benefit
there.
us at all.
No,
would just be
people would just
driving
come
across.
right through, actually,
We'd
yeah,
have to go right across where the boat ramp is,
yeah.
and we'd have to probably come out near Bel Air.
And the problem is there's nowhere it would land. Even Bel Air, it would have to come over Flomish to be able to make a straight shot of it. So, I don't know. I don't know if anyone else has heard anything about that, but just figured I'd bring it up.
We'll let the county resolve that first.
Yeah.
Joe, can we jump back to landscaping, Mason and Riverside Drive, for a quick second? You said landscaping's beautiful, it's maintained by a contractor. Do we have a schedule of garbage removal from that pond? I know it's a magnet. It comes off the bridge, it comes down the bridge, and as a major gateway to our community, it looks worse more than it looks good.
You can't pick it up and it not be trashed an hour later. That's the problem with it. So our guys are going out there. Typically, the inmates will go around and pick it up. It'll get cleaned up when they do the maintenance around the pond. I get frequent texts because the shopping bags, the plastic bags, get caught in the intake of the pump to the fountain, and the fountain often looks like it's not working or it has a low flow, and it's because there's trash in the intake structure. It is a big problem. Trash blows into that pond. A lot of it comes off the bridge. Some of it comes from the car wash, from the trash at the car wash, but you can't clean it one day and the next day it doesn't look like trash again.
I know, my wife has done it, and she gets so frustrated with it. She goes down and picks up trash, and the next day,
Yeah.
it looks like she didn't even do it.
All right, so, unless we have somebody there all the time, it's just very hard to keep up with.
We can get his wife.
Where are we? The comp plan, we had applied for a comp plan, Brian's not in here, we applied for a comp plan update, and the response came back today that we were actually denied, so we didn't get the grant for that. At some point, we're gonna end up having to hire somebody to update our comp plan. It's too voluminous for us to do internally. Most cities hire third-party consultants to update the comp plan. It updates the comp plan and the zoning regulations, and it usually takes a couple of years and a consultant to do. Riverside Drive Trail, this is the widening of the sidewalk. Again, nothing has changed on that. That is still the debate between the trails people wanting the sidewalk to be widened and the DOT saying it's a substandard trail, but it's sufficient, and they're not going to fund it any further. So we're kind of stuck in the middle, and then we also have no support from Ormond Beach in that they don't want to widen their sidewalk at their end of the city. Item 14 is the seaplane base. I shot Doc an email last week asking him what the status was. He had sent up some information to the state again, asking for relief of the Manatee Protection Zone speed limit, and haven't heard anything back from them since. Tree planting, consider Tree City USA designation. Unless we come up with a board, volunteer board, staff doesn't have time to be the Tree City designated board. And the one thing that has not happened during this coronavirus is I don't have a lot of people calling me saying, hey, I'm out of work, can I volunteer for you? Haven't gotten one call. We do have 2 people that are volunteering down at 2nd Street Park, and they're cleaning that park up. But with all these folks out of work, unfortunately, we're not getting anybody saying, hey, I want to volunteer. So we don't have the time and the manpower to do anything like that. And again, we don't have the inmates, so our staff has been really behind schedule on a normal basis, and I've actually got them working a couple of days now over at Pictona trying to get that community garden finished. And the last thing is the web design, and that was redesigned last year and is functioning. And we continue to work on our enterprise platform for our software. There are still some more modules there that we have to expand upon. So that's where we are with the old set of goals. And if you want to now jump into the new set of ideas to discuss what you want to continue with or not, and we'll go from there.
Great, let's do it. And before we begin, is everybody's goals already on here on the list that we have? Or does anybody have any extra ones?
I had 2, but we are code enforcement, we already talked about that.
Okay.
That was on mine.
And also, we talked about this at a commission meeting earlier, but explore additional building techniques, meaning containers,
Oh, right.
new types of construction
Small houses.
yeah, tiny houses, those type.
Oh, tiny houses.
Explore that, just,
Yeah, I think if we export, it might be a good fit for our community. It's something that I've read up on in the past.
Yeah.
Is that something that we would put, is that like putting a cart before the horse? Would we want to wait for somebody that has a container idea? And then,
shot one down 2 weeks ago.
no, I'm just saying, rather than try to put something on as what would your goal be? To put it as one of the
Well,
architectural design types?
we might have to pave the road before the car comes, in this scenario. Meaning, if you're looking for a city to where you can build a certain type of building and you look around and Holly Hill says, no, you can't build it, you're not even going to come ask. A lot of people.
Well, there's an undeveloped neighborhood, 2nd, 3rd Street, Joe, the old CEMEX plant next to that.
Third Street.
Yeah,
3rd Street.
it's just
So
west of that.
The infrastructure's there, the plumbing is there, the sewer lines are there. I think there's underground utilities there, there's a road, never got developed. Well, maybe some guy buys it and decides that the only way to make it work is to build container homes with it. If he came to us today, we'd have to tell him no, because we don't have the ability to allow container homes in our area. And I've had several people ask about containers things. I said, no, we don't have it. And then 2 weeks ago, some guy wanted to put it over on Riverside Drive. So I think there might be a need, there may not be a need, but I just think, just see what other communities are doing, how they're handling it, if it's something that's available, and, you know, if the right person comes along, maybe we could accommodate them.
Yeah, I think that's a good place to start too, is looking at the other cities and then looking outside of successful cities that may have expanded their, what's allowed to be
If
built.
you just Google container construction, there's some really well-done
Right,
buildings.
right.
Yeah, but what I was thinking is, we have a set of architectural structure types that we're limited to now.
Yes.
We'd have to put that in, or somebody came at us with an idea that's not in there, adopt some kind of a way to put it in there. I mean, what if we put in, let's say, containers, and somebody comes up with some idea that's got something else? Then we got the same thing again. I mean, what we gotta put some language that covers like anything above and beyond, or we gotta redo or kind of tailor it in the future again. I mean, typically, most people who come in with an idea, I wouldn't think they'd be looking into your architectural design code first. They'd probably just come out the economic developer and say, hey, I got an idea, can I do this in Holly Hill?
Right, I think if that guy came to Holly Hill today, Brian would have to tell him no.
Well, what I'm saying is, he wouldn't look and see all those things listed and say, well, it's not listed, you know what, I guess I won't even ask. He'd probably ask first and then find out. What I'm saying is, if we're gonna put something new in language that covers this particular structure, somebody else comes up 6 months from now with some new design that's popular, and it's not in there, how do we leave ourselves room for growth without having to do this every time? Somebody comes up with an idea that's not in there.
I don't think you can. I mean, I've seen houses that are being 3D printed now.
Yeah.
You load the concrete in this thing and it 3D prints a house in like,
I
12 hours.
think though the answer is that we will take a look at that. So, building has evolved over the years, over and over, and so to be able to allow the next type of building that may be taking place, and to say, hey, if it's an open possibility if they want to come in and do that, and that's an option we can explore. And then if there's a new type of building and someone wants to come along, we can always entertain that at that time. But I don't know of any other building structures, unless you do, that are popular, that are gaining steam,
Yeah, but
that
now-
possibly would benefit the city having us
and we
to
may
allow
look
that.
at it, Mr. Danio, and decide that we don't want to go down
Right,
that. We
right.
might- I'm not saying do it. I'm
If
just
somebody
saying,
comes out with this fabulous idea and it's not in there, we can adopt some way to get that
Yeah,
through?
we could at that time.
we could,
Oh,
but it
we
might
could.
take 6 to 8 months for us to do that. So if we had something basically pad ready, design standard there, and this guy comes, because they are becoming more popular.
Well, what I'm
There's-
saying is, that's your particular item, container.
Right.
6 months from now, something else comes out that's like the new.
Well,
hot item.
there's
How do
something
we-
out in Texas, they're building called barn dominiums.
Yeah, how do we,
They're metal buildings, it's a barn on the bottom and you live on top of it. And I don't know that that's an allowable building condition that we allow in our city, so,
And that may be one that we don't want.
so I don't know, I'm just, if you guys don't think it's a good idea, that was just
I like
something
the
I wanted
idea of
to.
being open to suggestions, I just don't know if we can handcuff ourselves to just containers when something else might be popular in 3 to 6 months. Can't we?
We can always
give
add
a
something.
language that.
Yeah, no, we're
leaves
not,
a
we're not
loophole?
handcuffing ourselves. We would just be
Well, if it's
allowing
gonna
an
take 6 or 8
additional.
months, we might lose a potential
Well, but
investor or something, or city, because they don't want to wait 6 or 8 months to change it.
Well, maybe then what we can do is we can look into all of the structures that are out there being built right now that are gaining steam, look at the pros and cons of if we should allow them or
Well,
not.
that was my goal.
Right, is just
Research
look-
additional building techniques.
It wasn't necessarily only about
Right.
And what if something
container.
comes on the market 6 months from now that's not in there now?
We get at
We
it.
add it.
If then it takes 6 or 8 more months? Oh, we added at the time.
Yeah,
Oh, I see what you're saying. Okay.
fluid.
No, I just don't want to discourage somebody coming in because they got this great new idea and gosh, we researched everything, we missed that one. It's gonna take 6 or 8 months. I don't wanna wait 6 or 8 months.
Well, and I'll say, luckily, you know, our reputation precedes us. Our staff tends to, instead of just saying N-O, no, they say K-N-O-W. And my dad says that a lot. I felt like my dad saying that. So they look into it and figure out ways to make things work. So I think that kind of answers that for you. I think it's good to look into. And if anybody has any objections to any of these goals, just raise the objection. Otherwise, we'll just assume that it is all agreed upon. Do you have any other items, Vice Mayor? Okay. Anybody else have any other items that are not on the list before we go down them? Okay. Do you want to take this, Joe, or do you want me to go one by one?
I mean, I can start. Some of these are my,
Yeah, Nature Trail is yours, I think.
yeah, the nature trail, you know, where the bridge on Riverside Drive is in the process of being replaced, and that's been a hazard. In the next year's budget, we're looking at the bridge that connects Sunrise Park South to Sunrise Park North. Well, around that in the wooded area is the nature trail. And that nature trail is a very hazardous trail. It's got a lot of broken boards. It's uneven. Some areas have settled. The pilings have gone down. Some areas the pilings have gone up. It's not level. It's about 450 feet, linear feet, of a wooden trail through the marsh area that I think presents a high risk of liability for the city. I walked that with Steve not too long ago, and I think it should be closed off. I don't think people should go down on it and walk on it at all because of the hazard that exists. And I'm almost at the point now where I think it should be removed and not replaced. We don't have the funding to replace it at a cost of whatever that is per linear feet for 6 feet in a marsh area. So I wanted to get your thoughts on what you want to see happen with that section of the
Does
trail.
it even get used, Joe?
Say that again?
Does it ever get used? I mean, how frequently does it get used?
It gets used periodically, but, you know, we've got enough sidewalk along Riverside Drive that is it really necessary for somebody to walk 450 feet through this loop in the woods
Plus we got the
on a
whole trail-
dilapidated pier?
We have the whole trail around the park.
Got the whole trail, you got the bridge to go from one park to the other. You know, this goes from the bridge, comes along Sunrise Park South, goes
Yeah.
along the road a little bit, and then comes to Sunrise Park North, meets up at the bridge in the parking lot again. It's just in bad shape. If you haven't been on it, and I think not too long ago, we had a woman fall. And we had, we already have a claim due to an injury on there.
Wow.
And
I'd
it's
rather
only
see
gonna
that
get worse.
$100,000 spent replacing the pier and the seawalls
Yeah.
than putting something that
Yeah.
is not so noticeable anyways.
Well, let me build upon that real quick. Side note that may be in here somewhere, yeah, Sunrise Park upgrade. I would rather use that 100,000 to, and I was gonna bring this up later, I think it's time that we start looking at Sunrise Park to possibly make upgrades. The pavilions and the picnic tables out there are wearing down. Just from age, we're keeping them up as best as we can. Our staff is, but it may be time to make some upgrades there. And I'm not talking huge structural changes, none of that, but maybe make some improvements, make them look a little nicer, and do that. Yeah.
Just one comment. When I made the statement, I'd rather take that 100,000 and put it towards something else.
There's no such thing as the 100,000.
It's not budgeted.
Right.
None of this is budgeted before Stella has a coronary.
But I just mean the money that we would have to be spending, I think would be better used servicing the rest of the park, is what I mean.
I agree.
Okay, so what do we want to do with the nature trail? Do we want to just
Take it out.
close it off for now? You want to work on removing it, not replacing it, replace it in the
Maybe we could get
future?
another Donnie Moore grant and
Yeah.
a low bid and have him pull it out of there for us.
So you're
Is there
looking-
any type of grant that we could get for that little trail? I don't think so.
It's
To take care of it or no?
It's small, it's really not even a connector.
Right,
Because you've
I
got
know.
the sidewalk that's there.
I'm more apt because it's more of a hazard than it is
It is.
an amenity to to have that pulled because we're gonna have to spend money to fix it, and I'd rather spend that money better spent elsewhere in the park. Any objections? All right.
Okay, stormwater retention credits. This is more of a philosophy at this point. You've got some new construction. We had a couple of new buildings that came into the city, and those developers were responsible for their on-site stormwater. They also pay a stormwater fee, an assessment on their impervious area of their property. Some jurisdictions, like the county, do provide a stormwater credit for new construction when they provide their own on-site stormwater. But keep in mind that everyone's stormwater fee doesn't go just toward their property, it goes toward the system. But when I spoke to Scott about it, he said some locations will give a stormwater credit if you have a retention pond that exceeds your requirement. So in other words, if you're required to have 10,000 gallons of stormwater capacity and you have a pond that holds 15,000 gallons, you would get a credit for the excess that's there. So I don't have the details because I didn't want to put time into it if the commission is not interested in looking at a stormwater retention credit.
What would be the benefit to the city, to the taxpayers? I know that the benefit to the business would be, but what's the?
There is no benefit to the residents. The benefit is that the developer, I'll give you the example. Back when Bill Arthur was the mayor and CVS built the pharmacy up on Flemish and Nova, they had to purchase the house next door in order to put in a retention pond. So they had to spend, it was probably at the time $100,000, $130,000 to purchase the house, and then the cost to build the pond, simply because we have stormwater requirements today that weren't in place many years ago. So on top of that cost, then the business has to also pay a stormwater retention fee for the impervious area. So it doesn't benefit the community in any way. In fact, it probably jeopardizes the community because you're going to be collecting less revenue in stormwater assessment fees. So the only thing it does is it may encourage someone to come in here and develop if they know they can get a credit if they're putting in ample or excess stormwater capacity.
If a new developer came today and said, I want to develop the 3rd Street property, and we tell them you got to build this much retention, and then they said, well, we'll do it if you give us credits on this, could we do it today without having this already, or would
No.
we have to set it citywide?
You don't have a credit system in place.
Okay.
Can we put a credit system only in the CRA?
Sure. You have to write it into your plan.
Which would be most of our business community, vast majority.
The US one, not the,
US
not
one.
the
Not Nova.
commercial or industrial stuff.
That's true too.
Yeah, I mean, we could look to evaluate it based on the CRA zone and how much new development, again, we talked about this yesterday. We're landlocked. We don't have a lot of room for new development. We have room for redevelopment, but not a lot of vacant land for people to be coming in here building new structures. There's very limited vacant land in this city left.
I guess my hesitation is I want to give our economic development guy, our new guy, Mr. Fall, all the tools in his toolbox to bring redevelopment here. But at the same time, I'm not sure that this is necessarily the golden ticket to get it. I think that we are very business friendly and we work with potential developers that want to come in and develop a property, which we have barely anything. I think we work with them pretty well at this point, and for us to give up that revenue, which is very well needed in other parts of the city, to accommodate a few businesses, I'm not sold on it right now, but open to hear opinions as well.
What's typically the credit, Joe? It's not a dollar for dollar credit.
I don't know. It could be a percentage of the fee that's paid for the excess amount of capacity that you have, as opposed to a credit on your total bill just because you have stormwater. So, I didn't research any of the examples or the models that might be out there. I wanted to first get your input to see, I don't like putting time into something if it's not going to be used.
I'm not sure I would be in favor of it. I mean, I'd be open to looking at it, but at this point, I'm not sure that I would be in favor of it, because I think it would benefit so few.
Yeah. I think the selling point would be, because I'm thinking about it on the fly here, Vice Mayor, is what you said about the CRA. And when we think about the motels, and if there's an extra tool to be able to get those redeveloped into, say, what's happening or what happened with your buildings that you're in, the cottages, offices, spaces, whatever, or redeveloped into something else, something better, then man, that's a valuable tool to have. So I don't want to sit up here and say that I'm all the way against it because I don't have enough information, but I'm not sure I'm enough for it to be able to say sink some time into it. Your time is very valuable, so.
I think if you put it in place, you're gonna have to give it to the people. You're gonna have to give it to Ace Hardware. You're gonna have to give it,
Yeah.
Ace Hardware has a retention pond. He has a parking problem. If he didn't have that retention pond, he would love it. The dollar store, they put underground retention, which was probably more expensive than buying the house next to the pharmacy.
Yeah. Well, do you only get the credits, Joe, now if your pond is bigger than what
There are
the
no
property?
credits
What?
Right now, there are no credits.
But if we had it, you would only get it if you have more stormwater than what is required.
You can
Antoine Curry is saying
you can
yes.
design it however you want. I
Okay.
mean, if you want to give people
But that's the
100%
idea.
credit because they have it, that's your call. Or you can give them credit just on the excess capacity, kind of selling back the capacity to the city because you don't have to worry about so much stormwater because I'm taking so much volume off the streets that you don't have to worry about.
Okay.
So that's what typically you would see is an excess capacity credit rather than simply because you put in what you
Right.
were required to, doesn't mean you should get any credit.
It'd be an
I'm good
incentive.
with the excess credit myself,
It'd be an incentive for you to build more stormwater.
because you're helping the whole system.
Right.
I'm pretty much for it, for one simple reason is, if you put in bigger retention ponds, it's gonna help reduce some of the serious flooding we have in
Right.
Hollywood, for one thing.
So they'd be doing us a favor because we don't have to build a pond.
So in that
Exactly.
respect, it would help the citizens. So the original question of is how does this help the citizens?
Riverside Drive and did it, Bill, it could correct some of the flooding right there.
Right.
Riverside Drive.
So maybe an excess capacity credit.
That might be something that I could
Give some encouragement if people wanna do it.
get behind.
Like that Blake Gymnastics, they just got done, they put a lot of water retention underneath the parking lot, that cost a lot.
They
of money.
did.
And then they bought the land behind them and put another retention pond back there as well.
Yeah.
So that stops a lot of flooding and things when you do that. Why not reward them a little bit for it? Not like that little bit of reward will break us.
Worth looking into for sure.
Okay, I'll look at
Especially to
it
get
from an
some
excess capacity credit.
Some dollar numbers.
I'll look into it.
Okay. RV parking for pickleball. So this has come up because, we're anticipating that Pictona is going to have some events. There's going to be out-of-towners coming in, especially during a tournament, that they're going to be looking for a place to park their RV. That's one aspect. The other aspect is you're going to have people that want to come here vacationing that want to visit the park and are RVing their way around the country and want to find a place to park their RV. So we have one local business person that's interested in creating an RV parking area very close to Pictona, but there's also other vacant parcels of land around the city that once you allow it for one, it opens the door up for all others. So Brian and I talked about it, and if we're going to do an RV park, you want to do it like the state parks do, where the roadway system is paved. You pull in on a paved road, you might be able to back your RV onto a campsite that is dirt, and you might even have just a pad there. Whether there's going to be water hookups, whether there's going to be sewer hookups, whether there's going to be electric hookups. If you turn it into just a place for RVs to park, I don't want it to become a mobile home park. There should be limitations that the RV can't be there for more than 7 or 10 days, during a tournament period, or somebody's there for a vacation for a week. And it's not that, well, you parked over here for a week and then you moved it over across the road for another week and you moved it back for another week, and it just becomes a rundown trailer park. I don't want that. I don't
That's
think
how
anybody-
many of the state parks and national parks have those rules. You could probably copy a lot of those rules from them.
Yeah. So the question is, do you want us to go ahead and put the time in to start to allow RV parks in the city?
It's gotta be non-primitive. That means you gotta have water, sewer, electric.
Well,
Can't be primitive. You can't just have a field where people just park.
that's what I'm trying to find out is.
Yeah, I mean,
should
I
they
wouldn't
have
consider-
water and sewer hookups? Some of them are self-contained. They have enough water on there that you could
Yeah, but
use
most of them
your,
aren't.
use your restrooms.
He would
and
know.
You might have a shower or.
And a lot of them,
whatever.
you said about paving, a lot of them, you pull into like Tomoka, there's not a paved road. I mean,
That's a state park.
you're saying,
I'm saying we're not a state park. And anybody that's got 10 acres of vacant land, you don't want to have start bringing RVs in, because now you have this uncontrolled,
so you're talking about paving the whole thing?
no, I'm talking about having a paved road that you drive in on the road. It may be a loop, it may be a one-way in, one-way out, and then you may be able to back your camper or your RV onto a campsite and then hook up. So the question is, should they have a hookup? Should they have a water hookup and a sewer hookup? Or do they just have a water hookup and they take their gray water or sewer and they bring it to a dump site and they pay to dump their sewer on their way in or on their way out of?
Do we benefit from water and sewer hookups as well?
We're not going to benefit anything.
Nothing.
Private property owner is going to benefit because they're going to rent the property for that purpose. We'll have,
Well, we're gonna charge them the water and sewer.
it's nominal. And how much water and sewer you think you're going to sell to somebody for a week? Really what you're looking at is the convenience of people coming in to enjoy the park, to Pictona, and play in these tournaments and games and become an attraction for people. I mean, you could run a nice RV park if you want to run a nice RV park. Or
Yeah.
you could run a rundown RV park.
Not with a $6 million property next door.
Right, so we got to figure out
It's
where.
like putting an old pair of shoes on a new suit.
Yeah.
My dad used to say
Where's the
that.
bar you want to set is what I'm trying to find out.
Thank you. I really do believe that we need some type of RV park if we are going to see the potential of Pictona across the street. I think at minimum, water and electric. And I don't know what it would take on the city's part to hook up some type of sewer hookups. Or are we talking one, I don't know how it works.
Isn't that
One
the owner's
sewer
expense?
Hookup or?
Again, the city wouldn't do anything. The city
Private
wouldn't
property
pay for
owner.
anything.
Okay.
It's private property, so if a private property owner wants to take their land and allow for 20 RVs to be able to park in there, he's got to create 20 hookups.
Okay. I would definitely want language followed by the state and national parks so that we don't run into those issues.
Typically in a average campground, whether it's a national park, a state park, or privately owned park, there's different levels of amenities. Commissioner Daniel said no primitive. Well, a lot of campgrounds have tent sites and they'll only have water. So you go to Disney, probably the most expensive place to ever camp in the
You go
world,
different
$180 a night. You can sleep in a tent with water. You can pull your RV in there and have water and electric, and you maintain all of your fluids, and then when you leave, you dispose of them. Or you can pay for the most expensive site there is, which is water, sewer, and electric. Then you
And
have,
satellite.
and then you have cable, then you have a 30 amp circuit, then you have a 50 amp circuit, but these are all designs that the property owner would have to make. I mean, I think, I camp quite a bit, I really enjoy it, and I think if it's done right, it could be another positive amenity to our community. What if someone bought Bishop's Glen, Bishop's Farm?
Farm.
And wanted to turn it into a campground? and they build an Olympic-sized pool in the middle with a slide and a mini golf course and horseshoes, and they put 100 RVs in there every weekend. No, but it's what, 12 acres over there?
It's a big property, yeah.
So, I mean, it just, I think if you talk to the RV dealers around the country right now,
Oh, it's gone.
it's exploding. RVing is the number one industry, recreational industry in the country right now because of COVID. Nobody wants to stay in a motel. They want to sleep in their own little house on wheels. So I think RV parking, not only for pickleball, but I think RV parking is something that could be incredible. We all know Mr. Hanger, Mr. Forte said Mr. Hanger wants to do it there. What if someone bought Whipbolds?
I didn't mention any names.
Oh, well, I know it's Mr. Hanger.
Yeah, so do I.
He's right next door there.
It's kind of understood that,
He's talking about, but what if someone bought Whipbolds and wanted to tear all that stuff down in there and put a first-class RV park right there?
How do you define a first class RV? I used to camp when I was a kid.
Well,
Is it
there's
first
different
class?
levels. Most, like Mr. Daniel said, most of the campgrounds that I go to don't have paved roads. They don't have a paved part where your RV goes, but they do have typically right beside your RV, maybe a 10 by 20 concrete slab with a picnic table and a grill. That's it. And then there's a water and a sewer hookup and electric hookup. And some of the concrete pads are brick. I mean, if you go out to the one that the Speedway has, it's just a concrete pad. You don't park on the concrete pad, and the reason you don't park on the concrete pad is because an RV like mine weighs 4,000 pounds. An RV like my dad's weighs 20,000 pounds. You know, so they'll break the concrete, and it's just not desirable. So I think there's a lot of research, there's a lot of design standards that we're not going to put in place tonight.
No, the question is, do you want us to pursue this? And
as long as we're on
I
the same
would.
page, we're looking at a level of here and above, not below.
I think, is there a way then, because I think we're all in agreement that this could be a great amenity, but is there a way that we could make it into being a special exception so that way they would have to come before us?
whether it's a permitted use or a special exception, the standard is what I'm looking for.
Here's
You may
Right.
want to decide
Right,
that this
right.
is such big business, you may want to turn Field 4 into an RV park.
Right.
Who knows?
here's the design standard, and I'm going to slam a local RV campground, but Chief knows where it is. If you go to Bulow Campground in Flagler County,
New Year's Eve,
there are people that live there
Yeah.
because all they pay for is their electricity. And they live there for $400 a month. And they have refrigerators outside, and they put sheds outside, and they live there. That's not what I want. I want
not what
people
any of
that
us
aren't going
want.
to be able
I
to
do
stay
not
more
want
than
that.
7 to 10 days in a row, whatever that reasonable time frame is, and then they leave.
and the hours, we want to be able to dictate
There's
the hours.
quiet times that
Right.
apply, and I think if you just go to some of the most popular RV sites, and you can Google them, just copy the rules.
Now, could we,
They've already thought of this
could
stuff.
we, I was going to say, because of the size of property, could we have certain restrictions if they have a bigger piece of property, like in your case, the farm?
Like I said, I don't want you to get into the weeds on it.
Okay.
I just want to know if you want me to research this and go down the road of allowing RV parks, not trailer parks, but RV parks.
Right.
Yeah, I would be interested in that, especially as a special exception that could come before the commission.
I think it needs to be close to the pickleball. If you have it way up towards the Bishop's Farm or something like that, it's so far away. People have to get from where they park down to that.
That's not the only reason that they come, we want to come to Holly Hill for whatever reason, that's just
Park right
pickleball.
beside it, you just walk over to it.
No, but there's many other things to do if we can get them here. Really,
Right.
we don't have a motel in the city that I would sleep in. So if we have RV parks in this city, maybe people will come and sleep in our city and then frequent other restaurants, frequent our retail spaces. But I was so embarrassed when we had the art show and some of the local artists said that they were staying in our motels.
Right.
And I felt bad for them.
Yeah, we're not just catering to Pictona, we're looking at it as global, our city global anyway. Yes, the answer is yes, I think.
Okay. All right, we'll go on to the next item, which is the overhead to underground Phase 2. So this one, I've talked to a couple of you about it. Some of you think that it may be in the city's best interest to forego the discount that we would receive on Phase 1 in exchange for not spending the $4, $5, $6 million on Phase 2. The problem that we have now is the rules have changed that govern your revenues from the CRA fund, and you have to have that money allocated for a project, otherwise we've got to give it back. It used to be that, well, you had to have it within 3 years, and it was very loosely interpreted. Well, now it's rather going to be strictly interpreted that you can't just sit on a pile of money just to have it in the coffers. If you decide to not move forward with the expansion of Phase 2, you need to come up with another project for the funds that are coming in pretty quick. Otherwise, they're going to wonder why are we taking this money in?
Do we know what that
Build
time
a
frame
city
is?
RV park.
Do we know what that time frame is? Thank you, Mrs. Gurney.
Stella Grenay, Finance Director. I'm not sure of the time period of when it has to be constructed by, but I do know that there's a separate audit that has to happen this year at the end of the fiscal year, so September, in regards to this, and I believe we have to at least have it designated, whether that's the final project that we do or not, or multiple projects that we need to designate it by September, whatever fund balance is in there.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Gurnay. I think it would be prudent then that we don't necessarily go ahead to fully discuss if we will continue with the Phase 2. I think it would be more prudent to try to find a project first.
I mean, you've got time. You don't have to start Phase 2 until a year after you complete Phase 1. And that's the design.
Okay.
And as you know, we're still somewhat delayed on Phase 1. I still have 2 properties that I'm struggling with to get documents signed. So
To do half the city is, it's like.
South Daytona.
What?
It's like South Daytona.
Yeah.
What is?
They only did half their city.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I don't see the point of
I
that.
think it's about $700,000 in a discount.
Yeah, when I missed a few years of it later on, but I got started on it.
Commissioner Johnson, can you speak closer to the mic?
I remember when I first got it started, I had to do a lot of negotiating with FDL, but they agreed if we do this, best I remember, and that was a long time ago, and I'm getting a little older, but if they give us 3 line miles, 3 buried miles of wire, they give us a 25% discount. Is that
Correct.
right? Okay. So we figured it all out, and we even had to go down 3rd Street to get the extra 3 miles. So 25% on that project, that was a lot of money. So if we don't do the 3 miles, we lose the 25%, is that what you're saying?
That's correct.
Okay, so that we lose all that.
Right.
But the thing about it is, what we're trying to do is keep from spending the extra money for Phase 2. How much would that be compared to how much discount we get?
Well, my guess would probably be somewhere around $4 to $6 million for Phase 2. By the
So
time
we'd
we
have to
get that.
pay $700,000 back from the discount we received, and then it would free up $4 to $6 million in the CRA.
We can do any underground north of Walker
Right.
Street.
Right, which a lot of it, once you go north, a lot of it, the power lines are behind a lot of the businesses. So I think it would free up money for other projects that may be a little better for the city, maybe a lot better, and may not take as long and be able to free up that money. I think that's the idea behind
And we
it.
don't know how much revenue we're gonna have coming in the next year or so, right? 'Cause we don't
I mean, we have a projection, but yeah.
We don't know what's gonna happen yet, so
Right.
we have to be a little bit conservative. We gotta kind of plan for things and hope for things and not actually commit to a lot of things, really.
I don't think we should talk about pulling Phase 2 until we have a tremendous project to replace it, because we still have a 1.5 to 2 years to make that decision.
Right.
So we'll keep it until a replacement project.
I
is
say you keep it
identified.
on there for auditing purposes and
Yep.
whatever.
And keep our eyes open and our options open for a way to spend that money more wisely.
Okay. All right, we still have a half hour to go. I don't know if you want to jump to, and somehow it's not on this list. We said we were going to talk about budget. I don't know if we want to talk about budget, not talk about budget, but before the 30 minutes is up.
Well, was it
Yeah.
budget or the millage rate that was on there?
It's kind of
Same,
one,
isn't it?
same.
One takes care of the other.
Yeah.
Well, I know that, but were we going to discuss the millage rate? I mean, I know it was set last meeting, but,
The maximum millage was set at the
Yes.
current rate. So we said we would actually use this meeting to determine if we're going to keep the maximum
Okay.
millage or not, and then if so, if we're going to adjust budget.
Right. Well, and I think the consensus from four votes up here was to set the
rate.
maximum millage and work through that. But if anyone else has,
We were waiting on you because you weren't here, but you sounded like you had an idea to figure out how to lower it. Because I mean, all of us want to lower the millage rate.
stated
course.
that you wanted
Yeah, I
to
mean,
lower it, and I'm willing to
Right.
entertain that.
I think every one of us wants to lower taxes up here. And I think that, if we're going to discuss it, I just think there's two different approaches to how you do that. And whether that is look at what you want and what you need to fund and come up with a formula then that says this has got to be the millage rate, or if you look at how much the citizens can afford, you think, and if you decide I don't want to raise taxes, then we have this much money to work with, just like our own home budget. So I really want a new car. My family has one car, but my salary says I can't do that. I can't go out and just make extra money just because I will it in reality. I can try, I can work harder. And so for me, during this time of drastic economic times where people are hurting, I just can't vote. And this isn't against anyone else up here. I mean, we all have our reasons. I don't take anything away from any one of you. I know you all want to lower taxes. I know, Roy, you own so much property here that it's going to come out of your back pocket more than anyone else up here. But it's one of those things that,
Good about paying the taxes, so it makes me feel good.
there you go.
Make me feel good.
I gave it to the government and they need it so bad.
Yeah, it doesn't make me
Well, I
feel
was just
good.
hoping you had some brainstorm ideas because I'm kind of leaning towards you. But
Well-
anytime I don't want to be, it's like we got to figure out. Stella did a hard job. I mean, hard work.
And with this budget, so I did go through the budget, and for me to pick and choose a item here or there, I'm not in the department, and I don't know if they need 10 extra reams of paper. I don't know if for instance, tonight we'll be hearing from our public works director about lime that wasn't ordered, and it looks like from the email we received today that was due to cut costs down. So I wouldn't know what chemicals to cut or what we would need, and I applaud and thank our department heads for telling us what they want, what they need to do what we expect them or want them to do. So from me, it's just from a whole different standpoint, and I just think for me, my vote will reflect a rollback rate. And let's be honest, I think that
What, do you want to go back to the actual rollback, or what millage rate are you talking?
rollback, and I think that over the last several years we have wanted to get back there. Last year it was the same thing. I had voted no and wanted to go back to rollback. At the second reading, staff came back with a substantial amount of savings to allow us to lower that millage rate down, and I voted yes for it. And and on the second reading there was 5-0 vote. So that's my take on it without having to take up way too much time. But if anyone else has anything to add about the millage rate or budget, feel free to speak up.
I look at the budget and goals that we're planning that we've gotten halfway through, 90% of them are probably capital improvement projects, which are one-time expenses. And if you look at the budget closely, the budget is balanced on fund reserve. And the budget is balanced on fund reserve for capital projects. So if we cut every capital project, it doesn't really affect our millage rate because we're just leaving that money over here in the bank account. The only way that I see to cut the millage rate, which is to cut our expenses, which has been cut to the bone in the past by other administrations, is recurring costs. And the recurring costs and the legacy costs are typically associated with people and programs. So if you want to seriously reduce the millage rate, you have to give staff some direction. What programs do we want to stop? I would like us to pick up more trash around the park at Mason Avenue. That's people. That's a program. That's a recurring cost. There's health insurance associated with that, retirement associated with that, and hourly payroll. So for me to sit here and say, don't clean that park up anymore. Don't do anything at Sunrise Park anymore. Don't cut the grass over there anymore. Let's wait. The inmates will come back. It might be 2022 when COVID is gone, but we'll just call it a hayfield. It'll be a natural hayfield. So I'm all for lowering the millage rate, but we can't just go to staff and say, lower it, when we have to make this body is willing to follow you, but we need to know what programs, we're not talking reams of paper. We're talking about, do we really need all the policemen? Do we really need all the firemen? Do we really need all the public works people? Do we really need to hire this economic development guy? Does Stella need her full staff there? That's
That's the meat and bones of
do
it.
we need to change full-time positions to part-time positions? That's how you really are going to cut the budget. So to arbitrarily just talk about the millage is the budget. So we have to cut the budget and then determine the millage. So we have, as a body, I'm willing to sit here all night. We can reconvene after this meeting to go through the budget line by line and figure out what programs or what personnel are we willing to do less with. And that's a tough decision because I don't work in Stella's department. I don't know what all those people do. Like you said, I don't know what this person does and that person does, and I don't know what they do in the police department. And I don't know what the evidence person does, and I don't know what the person does that puts the fluoride in the water does, and I just don't know. None of us do, I don't think.
Well, that's why we take staff's recommendation. They're the pros, they're the ones that do it.
Right, so I just need to know, how do we get there? Because we have to give staff direction that, okay, we put extra money in the parks last year by hiring the professional landscapers, and they were supposed to do a better job. Well, we fired them. But we got another company that I hope is going to do a better job. So that's just what I'm looking for, is for anybody to pipe up and say, I think we have a little fat here. And to Mr. Forte's credit, I don't think there's any fat. He would tell us if he said we can do with one less person at the water treatment plant. And okay, that's a $40,000 salary, but then you put their benefits, it's an $80,000 savings when you look at that one position. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at. We've added pickleball, we've added the senior center over there. We've added programs, and it's easy to sit here and go, okay, well, we're going to reduce the paving program. Sorry, Antoine, but that's capital. That's a one-time thing. What we've got to look at is programs, and I think we all want more programs instead of less programs. I'm going to stop. I'm rambling, but I think
You know,
Well-
you touched on a point. Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just saying, we all want to look good by lowering the rates. We were just hoping you had an idea because you weren't here and it was a real quick kind of, we just brushed through it. But if you don't have anything solid, then we don't have, I mean, we have to rely on the staff recommendation because.
Look, I'm not,
I mean, everybody wants.
excuse me.
Go ahead.
I'm not up here to you know, you to question my motives. And
I'm not questioning.
no, listen, Commissioner Daniel. I've stated the way that I felt, and I am willing to get down into the nitty gritty to do that. But also, Mr. Forte, this year, how much did you ask your department heads to cut from the budget?
In the proposed budget, I didn't ask.
No, I'm sorry.
In the current budget.
In the current budget.
What did we do, 10 and 15? Yeah, between 10 and 15% cuts in the current
Mr.
year.
Forte, did they cut that?
For the most part, yes, they would
Okay.
cut. It was moved
And
to
so I'm not going to go further with that because I'm not questioning anyone's motives. I'm not questioning any of our department heads. I understand where they are. I understand what they are requesting. But my point, which is being made, is if I decide that I don't want to ask more money from my residents who are struggling, who are out of work in this drastic time, right in this hallway, last week, Mr. Forte had to come out. Lady was screaming and crying because her water was turned off, and she couldn't afford $30 to get it turned back on. She had a 6-year-old child. This is happening over and over. My point is, and I get your point, Mr. Vice Mayor, my point is, I will not vote for anything above a rollback rate this year. And that's all I'm saying on it.
And we'll all vote no with you. And we'll be here for 3 weeks trying to set it.
Well,
Mr.
then
Mayor.
we would tell them that the amount of money that we have is a rollback rate. And that equals $77,000 less than what the current rate is. And we will find our staff will find $77,000 to cut.
Can I have
More
the
than
floor?
that. It's more than that, Mr. Mayor.
Out of the general budget, that was the email that I received from Stella.
I think it's 160.
I think it's 160 and then 70
Yeah.
some out of the CRA.
170 out of the CRA, 77 from the general, right?
No,
I
the other
think
way
it's
around.
the other way
No,
around.
other way around?
168 out of the general fund and
Okay, so-
67 out of the CRA.
So 177,000. So, look, that's where I'm standing on it, and we can argue whether I should feel that way or not, and whether you guys should feel the way that you're feeling, and I understand. But, like I said, I'm not up here to argue with any of you. I started this out by saying I'm not questioning or calling into any of your motives at all. And so I'd appreciate if.
Mr. Mayor, can I have the floor, please?
Yes.
I am not questioning anybody's motives. I'm not questioning any political reasons or as a past employee of a government that dealt with budgets myself for my own department, the police department, one of the highest budgets in every city. I know that it is not fair as a leader to go back to these individuals and say, cut me 10% from the budget. That's completely unfair. As a leader, they have presented me with a budget that it's going to take to run this city. I have faith in this staff. I have faith in the city manager that they're giving me the proper numbers. So according to that, I made the recommendation for the 6.25 on the millage rate. And you're telling me, as the mayor, you want to cut it back to rollback. I'm simply asking you where you're going to find those dollars. Because if you find those dollars and it's a good cut, I'm willing to support that. Nobody wants to raise, hell, it raises my taxes. I don't want to raise taxes for myself, let alone anybody else. But sometimes the evil steps in and you have to do what needs to be done in order to keep the services and programs and personnel that you have. So please give me some information so that I can make a very informed decision. That's all I'm asking for.
Thank you,
Could I
Commissioner.
just say one thing before?
Commissioner Johnson?
You were saying you didn't want to ask them to cut 10%. Didn't you say that they had already cut 10%?
Out of the current year, we took budget monies and we cut, and I'm not sure where you're going with that, and I'm not going to guess, but some of the areas where we cut were lapsed salaries. We didn't fill Nick Conti's position, so that saved money. We didn't fill Walt's position. We had some positions in PD, so some of the savings were actually in lapsed salaries. Some of the other savings were in, Antoine, give me an idea where you. Vacant positions. So a lot of it were vacant positions they weren't long-term, year after year savings. They were savings in this year due to unspent monies due to lapsed salaries. For the fire department, we couldn't cut much out of yours at all. We were so tight. Wastewater. So a lot of them were lapsed salaries, a lot of them were capital projects that we just didn't spend this year. We held it in contingency, so it rolled over. So, I mean, if.
Cut 10%.
We cut it, but we didn't cut an ongoing expense, we cut an expense for the balance of this year. Right. We didn't spend money for the balance of the year, as opposed to saying, I cut 50,000 this year, and that 50,000 will be saved every year. That didn't happen. We only saved.
So in your professional opinion, you've asked your department heads to cut whatever they can off their budget, and in your professional opinion, you feel they've already done that, right?
I feel that they've come to me with pretty tight budgets. Now, and I understand the mayor's position, I understand, I think, all of your positions. I don't think anybody's looking at me saying, Joe, you did a poor job on the budget. And the mayor has told me that directly. He's called me and said, I'm not looking at you saying you didn't do what I asked you to do. We're at 5.9% over rollback. So I can go back to my departments and say, let's find 6% in reductions. We're talking about a total of 193,000 in the CRA and the general fund. So can I go back and try to squeeze a little bit more out of someplace and get it below the current rate? It's possible. You know, I told you a long time ago, I could balance any budget. It's easy. What do you want me to cut?
But one other question I have on it is, I'm glad Stella came back in because she may have to answer it. But am I correct in the way that I look at it when we say if we collect, say, 6.25% this year and 5.90% next year, we are going to be collecting the same amount of money into the city. Is that correct?
Minus new construction.
No, because of new construction,
Yeah.
we would take in more.
You
This
take in a
year.
little bit more, but because new construction doesn't count in your.
So, but the thing about it, does that necessarily mean that each person that has property tax calculated this year is going to get theirs raised that much next
No.
year? Does that take
No,
into consideration?
You got to remember, anybody that owns a homesteaded
Can't go over
property, they're
3%.
limited to a 3% increase to their property value, so that will not increase. So who does pay the difference between, if it's a 6% increase and your homesteaded property is only going to increase 3% of its value, where does it roll to? Non-homesteaded properties
don't
and
have
commercial
homestead.
properties.
Mine is not homestead. Say like I pay my full property tax.
Your commercial properties will pay the
Right.
additional.
But does that take into consideration the extra businesses and things that came into the city that'll be paying along with it to increase that?
No, new businesses and new construction don't fold into that rollback rate. Is that
The-
correct?
It's new revenue
New
on top of
revenue.
it.
It's additional, right?
So, but new residents would.
Well, we're not locked in at 6.25 now.
Correct.
We set the max.
Correct.
But I need
Stella pulled
some
out of her
idea
magic-
of,
She pulled out of her magic hat last year. Maybe she can reach down and get something this year for us.
I wouldn't count.
To
Those
my
were
point.
accounting errors.
Yeah, I mean,
yeah, those were accounting errors. You can't really count
Yeah,
that.
yeah, don't.
I wouldn't count.
come on, Stella.
Sorry, I don't mean to point out the accounting errors,
They're
but
pretty well figuring ahead what we're.
You know, here's the thing, and again, I can dive back in. Nobody's going to walk out of this meeting telling me to drop it down to the current rate. I don't see that dropping it down to the rollback rate. I don't see that happening. I do see you saying, if you can find any more monies that can help lower the millage rate, go ahead and do it. I don't know if that will get you to a yes vote, because it's still a tax increase. But there are some areas that I can explore, and I don't want to make them public right now. I don't think it's appropriate. But there are some areas that I could explore to get those down a little bit. But just remember, as we mentioned I was going to say in the work session, we're still in the work session. When you're kind of landlocked and you've only got limited amounts of vacant land and redevelopment at your fingertips, new money's coming in is hard to find. So at some point, as we kick this can down the road, that tax number's got to go up. It has to go up just because the sheer cost of everything goes up. And just look at our city compared to what we used to compare ourselves to for years with South Daytona was always less than us. Now they're a full mill more than us.
And at the end of this year, we did our salary study a couple years ago and put into contractual obligations some pay increases. So this is next year is a negotiation year.
Right?
So we're going to be negotiating, and what we set the millage rate and the tax rate for this year, the entire city's revenue, this year,
Compound.
if we reduce it, the increase that's going to be compounded the next year becomes exponential. Because I can probably guarantee you that the next contracts that come before us will be a 3-year contract. And the end of the third year will probably be a higher number than the beginning, than the end of this year. In the next 36 months, there will probably be some increases in legacy costs. And when you increase the salary, then you increase the retirement, and when all the COVID stuff hits the wall, you're going to increase in health insurance next year. So what we do this year has a compound effect, which makes it even more difficult next year, where it's a 5% increase this year that might end up being a much larger number next year. I don't know. There's no easy answer. That's the whole problem.
Isn't that? And the other thing to remember is our state revenue shares have dropped terribly. So we've lost revenues in addition to the expenses that have gone up, and we're still holding the line with an increase of nearly 6%.
When do
Well,
we have to
and-
tackle it again? Next meeting or something?
What?
We don't have to do it tonight, right?
When is the first reading? That's not the next.
September.
It's in September.
All right, we
It's
got
a weird date too, right? It's a Wednesday or a Monday.
Yeah,
it's a
because of
weird
the school board meeting.
Labor Day on Monday and the school board.
Right.
Tuesday.
Mayor, I would at least, Joe, we're not going to solve it tonight. We can do it after after the regular meeting. I don't care. But I think we at least need to either workshop after our commission meeting or at another meeting before September, because I think this needs to be hashed out. We need to
Well-
know what items that need to be cut or are suggested to be cut, because as I reviewed the budget, it was pretty slim from what I saw, but I might not be seeing everything.
He just said
Well-
he might be able to do something.
And in respect to time,
Yeah.
I think we do
Yeah.
continue this conversation. Thank you all for your input. And looking at, for the audience just attending, you're not late. We're just going through a workshop. So we're finishing that up, a goal-setting session. And so we still have items on this list, and I do want to break very soon so we can take bathroom breaks and say hi
Have
to.
another workshop and finish this and bring back the tax thing in a
You
couple of
don't,
weeks?
you don't have to finish this tonight. And remember, normally I'd be
months
doing,
ahead.
Okay, yeah,
I'd be
then
doing
we-
this in February.
We can go ahead because there are some things that we do need to talk about on here. A lot of these actually were from my brain that I need to explain, I guess, to talk out. So we will continue this later. But if there's any, we have a couple minutes left. If there's anything else, we don't get to talk unless we're up here on the dais. So if there's anything else,
I forget where we're at now. CR extension?
CRA,
CRA extension was the next one. So we'll continue that.
Right.
Later on at another workshop. Is there anything else that we should discuss as a commission before we
Maybe we
take a
should
break?
talk about that. The chairman's here. He's only got
I
a
d-
little time left.
It's very neat that we have the chairman of the county here, so thank you for being here.
Try to sneak in undercover, I see.
I didn't even.
Yeah,
I didn't either.
we really need to start talking, yeah, he's really undercover, incognito, under
I
that purple
recognize his
mask.
wife before I recognize.
Ah, true, okay.
Well, maybe since he's here, we need to talk about what we want from the county, so what's some money we could get from them, Joe?
Anything.
I'm
you
not
wanna-
saying there's any ducks around, but there's, I'm talking about in the future, and I'm not sure this chairman's going to be here in the future. No sense in putting pressure where it doesn't belong.
Oh, man. All right, well, if there's nothing further, I'd like to adjourn this Seeing none, we will adjourn this workshop and meet back at 7 o'clock for the city commission meeting.